Everyone. For those of you who has joined us for the first time, let me say that we've been meeting every Thursday. We had 10 Thursday meetings already. We have looked into all kinds of crops, including winter crops, rape seeds, and wheat, whatever. You have a chance, if you missed all the previous meetings, to watch the video recordings on YouTube. My name is Vorontsov Vitaly of this AgroCare Agricultural Advisory Service. We are supported by the Swiss-Ukrainian project, development of the added value trade in organic farming and dairy products. We are also supported by FIBL and Safoso Swiss. Our information partner is Organic Info. You can find a lot of useful information there. Our today's topic is announced. We are going to talk about any crops, and it's going to be, main focus is going to be in soil fertility and water. We are going to pay the most attention to organic technologies. Our organic club discussion today is going to be nitrogen fixation, phosphomobilization, and composting according to Johnson's method. We have great experts with us today. I'm going to hold the frame for the discussion today, and we will have another topic of discussion later. So now we are going to listen to a presentation about the requirements for organic regulation of fertilizers and soil improvement. It's going to be delivered by Ivan Havran, the leading certification specialist of the organic standard certification company. You can start sharing your screen, Ivan. Can you see my screen? Yes, we can see it. You can make it bigger, please. Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. We are living in difficult times. My mission today is quite simple. I am going to tell you more about the organic standards and regulations, what we have to do to improve soil fertility, and what we can use in order to achieve better yields and better efficiency in the framework we are setting up for ourselves, namely to work effectively while keeping the balance of organic farming. Organic certification and standards is a subject area where I worked since 2006. So now I'm a senior certification specialist and coordinator of input groups. We focus mainly on assessment of our group practices. I mostly focus on horticulture, livestock production, beekeeping, aquaculture processing inputs. We work both with European standards and Ukrainian legislation. Based on additional products origin or source, we can look at the European regulation. Now we are going to have regulation 848 instead of the previous versions. What's the difference between them? If we speak generally about the principles that these standards are based on, they are not so much different. even though there is not much difference, the current standard is going to be more strict and more stringent. The auxiliary products for the agriculture are regulated in terms of what's allowed to use from among animal products, disinfectants, disinfectants, and so on. Their origin has to be from four sources: animal source, plant source, microbial, and mineral source. What kind of regulations? What kind of restrictions do these regulations have? Resources that have to be renewable. That's the key limitation. I'm going to highlight this repeatedly during my presentation. These standards and regulations are updated regularly, and certain substances or compounds are found in order to replace non-renewable materials that were used before. What does this regulation 848 say? That soil management and cultivation have to maintain or increase soil organic matter, enhance soil stability, biodiversity, and prevent soil compaction and erosion. These are the key objectives for all the techniques and measures we use in our farms when we work with soil. At the same time, biological activity of the soil has to be maintained and increased. I know that my colleagues today are going to speak, among other things, about legumes, and that's especially relevant for them. In fact, this is the foundation upon which all the approaches have to be based in agricultural production. But there is always one but. We cannot provide criteria or parameters of soil, the soil compaction, and so on, indicated on the previous slide, for various reasons, both objective and subjective ones. In Ukraine, we have our specific issues. We cannot introduce and apply manure for many reasons. What can we get it replaced with? Probably it could be dried farmyard manure, dehydrated poultry manure, composted animal excrement. All these components have to be sourced not from intensive animal husbandry. Here we come to definition what this kind of intensive animal husbandry is. One of the key requirements in this regulation is limitation of the volume of manure, of nitrate in manure per square surface of land. What is new in this regulation? It's similar. we can say that we can remember that all the microorganisms can be mentioned. A lot of microorganisms can be mentioned for improving the quality and fertility of soil, but they are not mentioned here. We have a provision which says microorganisms are allowed to be used, are allowed for use. And there are certain criteria which are quite broad, improving availability of certain components of the soil and so on. In fact, we are talking about the whole range of beneficial microorganisms to be used for all kinds of complexes. As for compost activation, plant based preparations are allowed for use. Now it's official. Biodynamic preparations are also allowed. Vitaly said that we will have other topics for brought up for discussion later. This way or another, they are now allowed in the regulation. What's forbidden is nitrite based fertilizers, mineral fertilizers, any other mineral fertilizers as well. As for allowed products, we have certain criteria which are not always easily satisfied. So we have to be really careful with the regulation coverage. Now we have this regulation, EU regulation 2021/1165, where we can find substances and compounds that are allowed for use, among other things, for fertilizers. We can have this list. You can find it on the screen: blood meal, hoof meal, horn meal, bone meal, fish meal, feather, hair, and skin meal, wool, fur, hair, dairy products. For all of these components, you have to have test results for chromium-6. These substances can be used as elements for hydrolyzed proteins that could be used as additional nitrate fertilizer. Why additional? Is because the key source of nitrate is microorganisms in soil. In order to have fertile soil, we have to focus on the primary source. We can do it for the plants with short life cycle. And this could lead to increasing the protein content in durum wheats. We could use plant-based proteins. They are really similar to animal-based because they have a very similar structure of amino acids, peptides, except for their property, their origin, their content is very similar. Leonardite, xylite are the elements that can be used as soil conditioners to improve physical properties of soil, especially on soils with high clay content or sand content. Xylite is common where I now live. It could be used to substitute peat. peat has its own limitations for use. I mean, in horticulture, in growing fruit and berries. In other with other crops, we can use silite. On the one hand, it improves physical properties of substrates. On the other hand, it improves also chemical aspects of soil. And silite is an alternative for peat. They are both non-renewable, but leonardite and silite are byproducts of brown coal mining. Sapropel is applied to the soil to increase soil organic matter and as a fertilizer. Sapropel and composted or fermented mixture of household waste have a high risk of heavy metal contamination compared to other fertilizers. That's why they have detailed criteria for heavy metal testing before use.
As for calcium, there is quite a wide list and a long list, and nature really gave us a big present. But these are the products of calcium are those which are not restorable, and this is the carbonate of magnesium and calcium, and it is possible to substitute them by the lime defecate from the sugar production, and also the residue of the production of the salt, and also the eggshells. And there are criteria, and they should not be from industrial production. And for Ukraine, it's a difficulty at present. And also during the occupation of the Sea of Azov, actually there was a lot of shrimp which have been processed at the high level, and these residues were used as the source of calcium and the source of hitinism. It could be used. Definitely, this group of substances is used to regulate of the pH of the soil, and also as the fertilizer, and additionally as a source of calcium. But now, well, it could be used the solution of the calcium chloride. But the products of the plant origin, and those, well, in the way they have been provided to us by nature, it was sawdust and wood chips and the straw. Those are the residues of plants, and we leave them in the fields. And also those which have been processed, those which have been thermally processed, and mostly these are potassium fertilizers. With a component of the alkali environment, and they are being processed without the oxygen, and it has a very wide sphere of implementation, and it improves the biology of the soil, improves the content of natrium, and improves the chemical physical properties of the soil. It fixes the nitrites. And if, for example, we can compare it to gelatin, the micro agent of the microelements, and biochar works the same way. Actually, it holds the nitrites in the environment, in the area where there is the access of plants. But at the same time, well, it has the amount depends on the soils, on the temperature, which fluctuates, but it's very important to know that introduction into the soil means that they are going to stay there for hundreds of years. In the South America, actually, the soils, terra preta, are created by using the biochar. On the other hand, the products, plant products of plant origin could be composted and fermented. And there is an advice, and there is even the requirement of the organic regulation that organic materials are to be composted, and then they are more accessible for the soil and in the future for the plants. And this is the composted bark, composted and fermented mixture of vegetable matter and biogas digestate. And definitely the composition of the components for preparing the digestate is quite wide. They could be both of plant and animal origin. And again, there are certain criteria of getting those, but the certification body always will tell us whether it is allowed or not while assessing them. And byproducts of other processes, this is stillage and stillant extract, except for the ammonium stillage, and the minerals. And the list is quite wide, and the list of the allowed minerals is quite long, and they should not be, they should be in unchanged form. With the exception of the magnesium and the potassium sulfate, but the calcium sulfate is the product of processing of sugar beet, could be used. And in this case, it is as a component for other agrarian production. And the source of phosphorus in organic, it's a phosphorite meal, actually, and phosphite aluminum calcium. And each of them can be used only in a certain groups of the soil with a certain acidity. And phosphorite meal depends on the pH of the soils. And phosphite of aluminum and calcium is used for the alkali soils exclusively. And also, it is allowed since 3 or 4 years ago, the amino acids have been allowed, and the practice of organic farmers have pushed to the fact that certain components have to be added to the organic regulations. And quite widely, the products from the seaweeds are presented in Ukraine, and mostly those are imported. But we will have an opportunity, maybe after we win, to use our own production of the algae, and certain producers wanted to do it. Also, mushroom cultivate wastes and the digit of worms. And the inputs or the raw materials for developing them is limited by the lists which has been enumerated afore, everything which has been included into Annex number 2. And if this is the manure, then definitely if these are plant components, and it had to be mentioned about the wood products. There should be assurance that the timber was not chemically processed. And micro elements, this is maybe the only group of non-organic synthetic. They are natural, but nevertheless they are man-made materials. This is the bore and 6 micro elements: bore, cobalt, iron, manganese, and zinc, and with the exception of the molybdenum, these are the compounds of these metals. Whether they are going to be substituted, most probably not, but usually the amounts which are introduced into the soil are very small, and most probably they are going to be kept on the list of the allowed elements for the agricultural production and organic production, but maybe there could be some limitations of the halate agents. If we are talking about the private standards, it is disallowed to be used, but PDF as a halate agent is not allowed, and it can be considered as the residue of the pesticides. And as for the list of the alert agents, well, most probably there's going to be a revision in the nearest future. And the final stage, this is the Annex 6 to the new regulations. Maybe this is an annex where the products and the substances which could get a special permission to use them outside the European Union countries. And we are in this area, and at present we have submitted our proposals and the list to the review of the European Commission. As for the list of the plant protection substances, because the situation with the fertilizers is more or less understandable. And there are certain limitations to use certain kinds of microorganisms to improve the process of composting or introducing them into the soil. There are no regulations and limitations as distinct from the pesticides. But if there are certain substances or practices which are to be changed, and there is a need in certain regions, there are their own practices which are not taken into account in other regions, it is possible to submit the request to European Commission on behalf of the member state. And this works through the certification bodies in our case, and through the amalgamated bodies of certification. The Commission applies to the group of experts, technical consultants on the organic production, and this group is called ECTOP. And the results of the research are being reported on, and no matter whether the results are positive or negative, they submit them, and the positive decisions can be added to this annex. And this is somewhat sort of a window of opportunity for the substances which are not allowed which are not included into the Annex 2 as fertilizers or other substances which are necessary. And with this, I would like to thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, I will try to answer them. Mr. Ivan, there was a question. The question was, what do you mean when you are saying about the conditioner of the soil, meliorants in Ukrainian, the soil improving substances? We do not have such a term in Ukrainian language. It has been borrowed together with the notion from foreign languages. These are actually meliorants of the physical nature and of the chemical nature. And Svetlana is asking whether these norms are spelled out in Ukrainian language and everything which is allowed. Yes, in accordance with the law in Ukraine, we are certified, we are being certified in accordance with the law of Ukraine, and we are, all this list of all these substances has been included from the previous regulation. And thanks God, the law of Ukraine and the list of the substances which are allowed in limited quantities has been copied from the previous annex. So actually, there are no differences, no changes to the previous list, and it copies the previous annex and previous list, so we can use all these substances in Ukraine. But another story is with the large quantities, whether the producers will be able to find them. And we can find it on the site, and there is a list of auxiliary, the list of auxiliary products, auxiliary substances. I have found it just now, and I am going to send a reference into the chat. Yes, the first part covers everything which is allowed by the standard and by the regulation. And the second part of it is the list of 2023. As of today, we are already adapted and we are going to prepare the list of 2024 by Christmas. And there will be the part of the substances. And at present, we are developing of the terms of reference on the platform Organic Tech. So we are trying to update And this is an electronic platform, and you will get the updated list. And we are updating it once a year. So at this platform, you will see the updated list of all those substances, taking into account the certification. And like, for example, natural ones, it's like chips, wood chips. Can I use the wood chips if it is not certified? Because I don't know who is going to certify the wood chips, or biochar, which since the beginning is actually not natural. It's artificial because I'm creating it myself. Although we with Mykola Bykov we are buying the certified biochar, but most people create it on their own. So, well, is it natural, or actually what's the difference, or what should be certified? Well, first of all, if you are producing it for yourself, so you have to take into account the origin, and the raw material is mentioned in the regulation. So this is the question to the wood chips. It should not be processed by chemicals. I mean that you might take the pellets which have been processed by the chemical reagents, and thus, in this case, it will be not allowed. Or you can burn the various kinds of wood chip materials with the synthetic resins, so it won't be allowed. But if you're if you're asking whether it is possible to get a certified wood chips, so you have to satisfy this requirements of the list. And you have to prove that this raw material is the timber which has not been processed by chemicals. This is the sufficient condition. But as for the biochar, this is a more difficult question, because the biochar can be allowed in case if the total number of aromatic resins and formulations does not exceed certain criteria. And here there is a risk. And there is a risk of high content of certain natural substances, but in accordance with the criteria of organic usage, it might be considered inappropriate to use. So this borderline is very fine, and for various substances, there is their own borderlines. Thank you, Ivan. So maybe we will answer other questions at the end, so that we can give the floor to the next speaker. Sorry for abusing your time, well, but nevertheless. And yes, thank you. And Mr. Bykov is going to speak to us. He is the consultant on the organic production. He's going to talk about the nitrogen nutrition.
Видно, да, Виталий?
Да, видно на весь экран. Да, все видно.
Все, сейчас я виключу
Добре.
телефон. Все. Да, дивіться, доброго дня. Мене звати
Good
Биков.
afternoon. I am Mykola Bykov, and I have an honor to speak to you on the topic of nitrogen nutrition and organic production. It's a very complex topic, and it is being discussed a lot. And there are various solutions. And my previous colleague who was speaking actually built a bridge to this topic when he was telling us about the regulations. But I would like to say that nitrogen is one of the most complex elements of our agriculture. And one of the aspects is about the following. This nitrogen cannot be found in the mountains, it cannot be found in the minerals, and in some other substances, but in most cases, it's in the air. So its natural status is to be in the air. It's like gasified, and and it always is trying to escape to the air. So we have to tie it into the soil so that it will be available for the plants. In the air, we have 78% of the nitrogen, and we can find it in three forms. It could be found as like molecules, and also there is like ammonia and also nitrogen-containing gaseous emissions from the factories. And in these cases, we mean nitrogen which is in the air. It is possible to extract it, well, if it is connected with the microorganisms. Only the microorganisms can actually tie it with the soil. And where we can get the nitrogen so that the yields will be increased in organic farming.
Це компенсувати і працювати більш гибко.
We can be more flexible for that purpose. First of all, where do we take it? Where can we get it from? We always have some percentage of nitrogen in soil. It could be either bound or free. We need to have a great volume of available nitrogen. One specificity, it can be it cannot be in the free form. It is always bound. That's why this soil complex is quite an average source of nitrogen. The next source is green manure, so to say, or sorry, plant residues. These plant residues should be degraded as soon as possible, and that would make nitrogen available for the next for the following crop. The best way is to mix them with the soil. One of organic farming objectives is degradation of plant residues. The next source is nitrogen-fixing microorganisms. They are this middle link for us, and that's why we need to increase the volume of such organisms. That would make our soil more biologically active. That's when you bring your soil to a lab and they do the testing and show how soon the soil is going to generate nitrate-containing substances. Next source is green manure. They are generating a certain amount of green mass. We can use legumes as a source of this manure. This nitrogen is degradable and is available. Next way to have more nitrogen is crop rotation. With good crop rotation, we will have enough nitrogen in the soil. And the last one is, of course, fertilizers, organic fertilizer. These are the 6 sources, 6 ways to have enough nitrogen. I really like this Australian microbiologist who produced a number of preparations that improve the quality of fertility of soils in New Zealand and Australia, which are quite poor in nitrogen. There is no problem with nitrogen, said Graham Site, this researcher. He says we have to improve the soil, we have to balance it, chemical, biological, and physical properties. His second statement is we have to make the soil healthier. We have to keep working on health of our soil. And one of examples here is degradability of all the residues in your soil. It's an indicator because it means your soil contains a lot of good microorganisms. The third statement of the researcher is feed the cow that lives in the ground. We have some bacteria there. You have to work with them, with your other microorganisms. You have like fungi, you have to feed them. This leaf cover is responsible for carbohydrates, for the root systems. So we have to make sure there is good leaf cover on the ground. What are his guidelines or recommendations? You have to balance calcium and magnesium ratio. We will have a separate webinar on this methodology. The ratio between these two elements is key. Your soil must not be too compact and not too sticky. It has to be live, like cottage cheese. The second recommendation is to have enough available phosphorus in the soil. Because phosphorus is also necessary for our soil cow, so to say. One point here, everyone involved in soy production know that soy needs molybdenum. It's like milk for our microorganisms. In most cases, we have deficit of this element, molybdenum. That's a very important element. Cobalt is also important. We have to remember on top of that about iron. Iron contributes to chloroplast health, and if we see that our leaves of the plants are not green enough, it means the root of this plant does not have enough nitrogen. This is the formula of Sam Grace. You can read his works. He's very good in theory and practice. Now let's take a closer look at each of these 6 blocks. This is a very well-known chart of a soil expert. We can look at the general nitrogen in the soil. It's not always available, but we can see how much nitrogen is there. Plants cannot always take advantage of that nitrogen, but we need to take care of that. This is where the soil conditioners come into play. They can improve the quality of soil. We can use compost or peat to make soil better in terms of physical properties. Plant residues. If you work with soils, you know how much nutrients are still there in these residues. In this chart, you can see approximate content of various residues and the content of nutrients. If we have good rate between carbon and nitrogen, it should be 20:1. That's the best one. It enables plant residues to be degraded most easily and smoothly. If this ratio is different, it would mean soil nitrogen would be necessary for degrading, and that would lead to soil nitrogen deficit. That's why we can sow not the early soy, but a later yielding soy. The same is true for winter crops like wheat, barley, oats. We harvest them in the middle of summer, we mix them, and then we enable the residues to degrade. You can see this dynamics on this graph. You can observe how variable the nitrogen availability is. Whenever we introduce other materials where C and ratio are not balanced, it leads to depletion of soil nitrogen. But then, due to plant mass degrading, we balance it out. As for crop rotation, I always recall my friend and colleague Vitaly Ivanyuk, who said that binary crop rotation with 50% of legumes would enable us to accumulate enough nitrogen. So most of the farmers use this principle. They use soybeans, or green peas or other legumes. That makes it possible for them to have easily degradable plant residues and have enough nitrogen in their soil. This is a good practical approach. Now, organic fertilizers, Vitaly has a lot of tables and details. We are looking at manure, not compost, because manure can have different ratios and different contents, unlike compost. We do not recommend introducing manure. It has to be composted before introduction to the soil. Of course, the composting process has to be certified. You will have slightly less volume, 30 to 40% less volume of compost compared to manure, but it would be more concentrated and it would have better availability. When we think about the volumes of compost, how much of it should we introduce? It's above 20 tons normally. In this presentation, we normally have balanced production, green manure, perennial grasses and plants, and that's important. What do they do after harvesting? Let's say sunflower seeds. They have some residues on the soil, and they after that they sow veg, for example. The leftovers of sunflower seeds on the ground, they improve the soil buckwheat, veg, so that they can so that they start having young seeds, and they process the soil with disc machine. You can take a look at this technology. They've been using it for over 50 years, I guess. They get very good yields with it. Nitrogen fixation by microorganisms. We all know about Azotobacter, which are very well known. One of the following presentations is going to cover spore producing bacteria, and they fixate nitrogen. It's better to use well-known strains, and it's not necessary to inoculate legumes. You can work with cereal and other crops. It would improve availability of nitrogen. Mechanical tilling or tillage of soil. Next Thursday, we're going to talk about technology for mechanical tillage of soil. We need to suppress weeds, and we have to accumulate moisture in the soil because it's necessary, among other things, for bacteria, right? This moisture is necessary for improving availability of compost. We have to always try and ensure our soil is permeated with air. We need to avoid conflict between aerobic and anaerobic bacteria. This could improve the availability of nitrogen for bacteria. So when we mix soil, the degrading decomposition takes place with a better rate. It moves on quicker. Now let's have a closer look at what we need to do. We need to increase use of nitrogen. How can we do that? With the help of legumes, microbiological products, and mechanical tillage. We need to take this soil, take advantage of the components of the soil. Now, let's say we need to preserve this nitrogen. That's what our farmers say. Canadians say that green manure is some kind of things we preserve for later, like in jars. The plant residues decompose gradually. Then we add compost mass. We understand that it's not going to be available momentarily. We know that it's distributed through the years, like 3 years after introduction of or applying it to the soil. Excuse me, someone said something. And sowing green manure crops. Now, let me give you this example of a farmer who uses 50% for legumes, and you see the proportion of nitrogen, 4 milligram for 100 grams. Whereas for other farmers, it's 0.09. This is potentially nitrogen that is formed in soil. He doesn't use any organic fertilizers. He doesn't use any other techniques. He just sows green manure crops, and he uses legumes, up to 60% of legumes. Now look at this machine introducing the compounds. This is in Odessa region. Now they have very good harvesting results. You can take a look at our materials on our website. They are both in English and in Ukrainian. You can get a lot of useful information through these files. I'm sorry, I'm a bit too lengthy with my presentation. No, it's okay. We will have a Q&A session later. Now, We have the next presentation, soil improvement, nitrogen fixation, phosphomobilization, Johnson's Compost. It's going to be delivered by Mykola Bykov, who has a bachelor's degree in rural engineering, who is an agronomist, expert for organic cultivation, and who is working at Research Institute of Organic Agriculture, FIBL, Switzerland. He works at the Department of International Cooperation of FIBL and works in procurement and production in Eastern Europe. Nastya, is Nicola going to share his presentation from his own computer?
Yes, that was the plan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Так, чую.
Yes, we can hear you.
Так, вот.
Okay. I'm sharing my screen. Okay, does it work?
Nicola,
Так, це ви свою англомовну. Так?
Nicola, please share Ukrainian version of your presentation.
Yes, it's Ukrainian version on my screen.
Yes, we
Okay.
can see that. And I'm also demonstrating your English version of the presentation in a second. It's all good. You can start, please.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Mykola Bykov. Thank you for the introduction. I'm speaking to you from Switzerland, from the FIBL Institute for Research in Organic Agriculture. We are going to discuss a little bit about soil improvement, mainly nitrogen fixation, phosphomobilization, and Johnson compost. Today, I would like to present you about first on nitrogen fixation, something a little bit complementary to my colleagues, which were speaking before and who will speak after. I would like to emphasize a little bit more about the maximization of the effect of cover crops. I would like also to talk about the effect of semi-permanent cover crop, which are called LAYS in English, and also intercropping, how to integrate legumes into a grain rotation. About phosphomobilization, I will shortly talk about the difference between available and total phosphorus available, and how to enhance the availability of phosphorus in the soil, which is usually quite critical in organic. And the last chapter regarding Johnson compost, brief insights on the production, what are the different uses of this type of compost, and I will at the end present a very few results of this technique. A few words about FIBL. FIBL is a research institute born in Switzerland 50 years ago. And from the very beginning, FIBL aimed at finding practical solution for organic Swiss farmers at the beginning, and then we developed the institute with several different research departments, tackling and answering to issues of organic anywhere in the world, from India to Africa to Latin America. But the original aim of FIBL has always been to answer to farmers' problem first, and not science for science. Today, FIBL counts 6 different offices. The main office is still in Switzerland, but we also have colleagues in Germany, Austria, but also in Hungary, and an office in Brussels, which is, let's say, a kind of lobbying office and an advisory office close to the European community. I am myself working in the international department, which is not a research department, but more we are working more as a consultant and extensionist. My role is to work in the market and sector development. with several projects abroad, mainly in Eastern Europe, as you mentioned it already, but also a little bit in Africa. And more personally, my background is agronomist. I've been working for more than 20 years in Europe, mainly in Poland and Romania. I used to manage a 1,600 hectare organic farm or arable farm in Western Romania for more than 10 years. I'm also advising and lecturer for on organic farming topics. And now for almost 3 years, I'm working at FIBL, mainly on Eastern Europe projects. So back to our today's topic, and we will start with this chapter regarding nitrogen fixation in organic farming. And let's discuss about how to maximize the effect of the cover crop and other kind of plants in the rotation. How to maximize this, let's say, seasonal cover crop, which are the short-term cover crop, which are seeded for a few months only, in comparison with the perennial or semi-perennial plants. The nutrition roles of the cover crop can be represented through 4 different functions. First, a function of production. That's the one we know from the legumes. So catching this nitrogen from the air. Nitrogen capture to avoid the leaching of the soil nitrogen into deeper layers. So catching what is already in the soil. Also bringing other elements into organic form. That means that the plants will take some phosphorus, potassium, and all other micronutrients in their tissues, and they will release it under organic form. And then catching is important, but it is nothing for our crops if these cover crop cannot restitute all these nutrients. So it's very also important that the cover crop have the ability of quickly restitute and give back all these nutrients. So an effective cover crop must accomplish these 4 functions: catching the leaching nutrients, producing nitrogen from the air, from the atmosphere, and release a maximum, catching, as much other nutrients as possible, and then release all these nutrients quickly for the following crops. So how can we maximize the efficiency of this cover crop? Because we have seen it. I'm glad to see a very nice experience in Ukraine already. This is one of the cover crop is one of the main tool that we have in our organic toolbox to improve nitrogen content and other nutrient content in the soil. So first, a few rules. It is also exhaustive, but this is a few term rules to maximize the effect of this cover crop. Just don't rely on one single species. Try to blend at least 5 to 6 different species in the cover crop. Don't rely also only on legumes, because legumes are not the best one to catch the leaching nitrogen, which is already present in the soil. So usually a good mixture will have 2 to 3 different legume crop, like veg, peas, latirus, chickling peas, whatever. But also at least one nice catching, great catching species like crucifera, even rapeseeds. Let's say rapeseed volunteers are excellent at that. Mustard, radish. All these crucifera are the best one to catch leaching nitrogen. Make sure also that you have everything everything that is needed for your legumes to grow, meaning sulfur in the soil, but also even the right rhizobium I was in Serbia last week, and I saw very strangely in very nice black soil some green beans, garden green beans, which are really struggling with their growth because actually the rhizobium, natural rhizobium of the green beans was not present in the soil. So yeah, check the presence of the good rhizobium. Eventually add it to the mix. One other rule is to plant as soon as possible.
А також є ще одне правило.
Hello, I have something in my ear. Plant as soon as possible the cover crop, so right after the harvest.
Технічна підтримка. Будь ласка, щось трапилось. Звук, український звук перебиває все.
Ага.
Вкладач чує саму себе чую.
Да.
Мене чує.
Sorry, I have some sound in my headphone.
Yes,
Mykola,
Mykola,
I'm sorry, this is
just,
technical. This is a technical problem. They're now going to fix it. You hear the translation.
I can continue, or
no, just stay just for a little
Okay.
bit.
Так, от зараз на український канал вас чутно.
Так, але не повинно, я не повинна себе чути, і Ніколай не повинен мене чути.
Так, а зараз?
Can you, was it okay just a moment ago? We were checking the Ukrainian channel.
Yeah.
Stay on a little bit. I will
Okay.
tell a few words and you will tell us whether it's okay or not. Зараз було все нормально? Was it okay now, Nikolai? A
Yeah,
moment ago.
I haven't heard anything. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
good.
All clear.
Да, давайте продовжувати, тому що от український канал, да.
So let us start.
Okay, I go on. Yes. So as I said, the volunteers after harvest can also do the job. After canola, for example, use the volunteers of canola to catch the nitrogen and just add a few legume species in the mix. Cereals also can also catch this nitrogen. Volunteers of peas are excellent as a cover crop. So just after, if you are growing some winter or spring peas, what is growing up after harvest can also be used as a cover crop, maybe added with a few other varieties. And quite important is the management, the way you will terminate the cover crop. We have seen with Mr. Bykov just before that the C per N ratio is quite important in the release of nitrogen. Don't wait too late until you terminate the nitrogen. You terminate the cover crop, sorry. The best ratio between CNN and biomass production will be obtained when the cover crops start to bloom. From the blooming, the content of nitrogen regarding the content of carbon will decrease in the plants. So the best moment to terminate the cover crop in order to have the nitrogen as fast, as quick available as possible is when you start seeing some flowers in the cover crop, so on the legumes. Another type of cover crop is the semi-permanent lay. It's usually semi-permanent pasture of clover or alfalfa, depending on the pH. There are many advantages, like resetting the weed stock situation. So after 2 years of well-managed lay, the weed stock will be very depleted. You also reshape all the soil structure thanks to all these deep and strong roots of alfalfa and clover. You will really restructure the soil. You of course reload the soil with a lot of nitrogen. Maybe 200-300 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare after 2 years, depending on the species, depending on the management, but the quantity is huge. But you also, like I mentioned in the 4 roles of the cover crop, you will also bring up high level of phosphorus and potash on the topsoil, thanks to the deep roots of alfalfa and clover that are going to mine these phosphorus and potassium and other micronutrients in deeper layer than annual crop could do. So a few rules about these semi-permanent lay. Try to promote a quick establishment depending on the weather. Usually establishing them in Ukrainian context, it's better to seed them in September. Because you will avoid a lot of weeds if you are seeding in the spring. These clover and alfalfa, they are usually very tiny plants at the beginning, and in spring you always have this flush of weeds of spring weeds. So the best way is to, if weather allows, to seed them in September. If not, seeding in under cereal is possible and works, but only if you seed and not spread it, like you see this picture on the top. This seeder in the wheat is not suffering at all at this stage from the seeder operation. But then you have the advantage of having this clover or alfalfa already established at the harvest, and also the wheat or any other cereal is kind of covering a little bit the soil, and then you avoid having too many weeds also in your cover or alfalfa. So planting it into cereal that way is really feasible and quite successful. Once you have your lays established, the most important is the management. If you want to have this weed depletion effect, you really have to manage properly the lay, meaning cutting as much as necessary, and the cutting starts at the first flower you see again, because from the first flower of clover or alfalfa, the biomass production is decreasing. You reach a kind of plateau, and if you really want to maximize the biomass you produce per year, then you have to cut it once the first flower appears. Choose alfalfa for basic pH. This is something you know already. And clover, if you want to maximize the biomass, choose some red clover or tetraploid red clover more precisely, which are really producing from the first year a huge amount of biomass. Other ways to introduce legumes in the rotation, besides this semi-permanent lay or the seasonal cover crop. Other ways would be to use bicrops. We have seen a very nice example with Mr. Bykov just before. So this is a mix between legumes and cereals, or might be also legumes and linseed, or legume and crucifer. There's a lot of available possibilities. Seed rates, they have to be adapted to your country, but we are only in the beginning of these crop mixes, and really, I used to say imagination is the limit. I also have seen some mixes of two different legumes as a cash crop, which are working very well. So this is one of the possibility. The permanent cover, you see on the bottom left, the combine, the picture with the combine. This is a permanent clover, which has been seeded with winter oats on top of it. So this is cereal cultivated into living cover crop. So the clover will stay for years. This is, in this case, white clover, white dwarf clover. And the cereal can be repeated a few years, and in the same times you keep building the nitrogen stock and the fertility of the soil. One last option, which is a little bit more precise and technological, let's say, is the relay cropping. This is the combine on the right, the picture on bottom right with the combine. This is the technology which aims at planting a crop into a maturing cereal. So in this case, not entering into details, this is soybean under wheat. So you see the combine is harvesting the wheat, and underneath you have already the young soybean planted for 6 weeks already, and they are ready to explode thanks to sunlight reaching the soil. Let's speak a little bit about phosphomobilization now in this second chapter. When we say phosphomobilization, it's the difference between the available phosphorus for the plants and the global stock. You see here, it's you have on analysis 100 times more phosphorus in your soil than the available phosphorus. So the whole question is, how can we get into this huge amount of phosphorus, even though on this analysis, this is not a great example because the soil is quite poor, but even in this poorest soil, you have a huge difference between what is available and what is blocked in the soil. So a few different technologies, but I have to say from now there is no magic solution at this moment regarding this phosphomobilization. There are some specific commercial microorganisms sold by many companies. You have the solution to enhance the rhizosphere, to make the rhizosphere around the roots more, let's say, aggressive on the phosphor. You have these mining effects of the cover crop and mainly of the lace, the semi-permanent lace, and finally some, as said, pea extracting plants which are known to mobilize phosphorus. But first thing first, phosphorus is available under certain conditions in the soil, meaning mainly the pH. So before thinking about any more or less costly solution, I think the first thing to do for farmers is to adjust their pH if it's not in the right window between roughly 6 and 8, 8 being very, very high, but at least over 6. To make sure that most of the phosphor can be available, the ideal starting with 6.5 of pH. So this is maybe the first measure to apply and maybe one of the most efficient. Then microorganism, I think we have a speaker afterward which will present a little bit more on this technology. I'm personally not an expert in this field. I'm using more cover crop solutions. But as far as we know at FIBL, there are no, let's say, big proven effect of this organism, only because this is very complicated to accommodate foreign bacteria, foreign microorganisms into any kind of soil. This is already very complicated to accommodate them and to stay on a longer period. But bringing these microorganisms in unknown and very different environments, meaning soil type and temperature, annual temperature, and so on. This is something which is very precise, very delicate, in which is not always successful. And very difficult yet to find a one size fits all, meaning maybe some bacteria and some products working in Western Europe or other continent will not give any result in Ukraine, for example, because conditions are very different, meaning soil and climate mainly. The rhizosphere enhancement. This is the Johnson compost that we will speak a little bit on it later on. This is this Johnson compost. Just to say that's a farm-made input, so at least it's almost free. It doesn't cost much for farmers to try it and to try to adapt the recipe to their condition. And the big advantage is that we will develop and use local microorganism and microbiome. Some results we will see are quite encouraging. We will see it in the chapter number 3. Using the lace, meaning clover and alfalfa on longer period, is also something which give results. Because as I said already, these semi-perennial or perennial multi-annual crops, they have the capacity to dig deeper with the roots and to access some further stock and quantities of phosphorus, but also of potassium and other micronutrients, and to bring them under the form of their aerial biomass, to bring them on the topsoil. This is a small experiment I had a few years ago in Romania, but related to permanent cover crop and cereals. I mean, no-till cereals seeded in living cover crops, and I was performing some sample analysis of soil in this field with or without cereal, just to see if I add a cereal to the system, am I still building the fertility in the soil? The answer was yes. A slight difference, but still, if you look quickly at the table, before planting the alfalfa and then after 2 years of alfalfa alone, we had an increase of almost 3 times the content of phosphorus and almost twice the potassium. Another solution is the specific plants, what we call the phosphorus mining plants somehow, like the buckwheat and Phacelia. But regarding buckwheat, there are some studies made on the subject, and actually, the buckwheat can mobilize very stable phosphorus, for example, from the phosphate natural rock. But buckwheat cannot find phosphorus where there is not. So it can mobilize phosphorus when the concentration of the, let's say, stable phosphorus in the soil is quite is middle to high. And the fact with buckwheat is that this is a plant which enjoys a luxury consumption of phosphorus. So the more it has, the more it's taking, even if it's not needed for its internal biomes and for its own growth. So it will consume much more phosphorus that it needs, but keeping it in the biomass and restituting it under organic form. So the study you see on the right, it's you have the link there. It just shows that phosphorus in presence of rock phosphate will consume and retain much more. We'll have the buckwheat will have the capacity to extract this phosphorus from the phosphorus natural rock and keep it in its tissues. Much more than maize, for example. That was the aim of the study. And now the last chapter regarding Johnson compost. I think this is technology that some of you has already used or tried. This is something quite encouraging because personally I really like the solution which are farm made and which doesn't cost almost anything to farmers, but a little bit of labor and attention. First, about the production, this is mainly about the right mix because afterward the compost is working by itself. So the good infrastructure, meaning something made by yourself, or this box which is sold already in Europe, a little bit more let's say accurate and with some assistance. But this compost can already be made by yourself with very simple material. The right mix is really important, meaning a third of manure, a third of green waste like leaves or grass, and a third of wood chips, not too big also. For a very first batch, what is usually said is that farmers or composters will try to gather the native microbiome, native grounds around the farm, so not in the field, but what is around in the old forest or native prairies, native pasture. Collecting a little bit of humus here and there will help to re-establish the native microbiome into this compost, and thus afterward in the fields. So this is a process, a quite long process, but where you just have to monitor the moisture and the temperature, not to be too low during the winter. But there is no turning of the compost, so this is a very easy process. And this process can take 9 months to 1 year. So you have to, you have to be organized in order to use it within a year, and you have to have a kind of production schedule to ensure the quantity that you need. So the different uses of this compost are direct application, so just spreading this compost on the field. But when you see the amount needed and for larger arable crops and the infrastructure needed for 1 cubic meter, this is not always the best solution, or it is not always the best use you can do from it. That's a good use for horticultural, for production of seedlings or whatever, anything in very small areas, vegetable production, greenhouses, and so on. But for arable crops, we will prefer to use it as a compost extract. So extracting, making a kind of tea out of this compost, extracting the liquids and spraying it on wet soil or in rainy conditions to make sure that the microorganism can survive and enter the soil. Or more recently, furrow application. Most of the modern seeder, they have these options of injecting. For conventional, it's injecting starter liquid fertilizer. This same equipment can be used to inject compost extract to simplify the manutention and to simplify the process compared to the seed coating. Seed coating being the third option. This is the picture you see. That's a fellow of mine, farmer in Belgium, which is now coating everything, every seeds he is using, being a cash crop or even cover crop. So this is a mix of compost extract, molasses, and milk, which aims at feeding the microbiome. A few results. Some trials are still ongoing in Belgium and Germany, as far as I know, but I'm pretty sure they are at farm level. There are trials in every country in Europe. The few results I have seen already shows 15% more. This is in conventional. 15% more yields in wheat regarding seed coating with fungicide. So it's not equivalent to fungicide seed treatment, but it's even more productive. But the most important for me is not yet explained, but the ratio of nitrogen, the nitrogen efficiency with this kind of seed is much higher. This is 15 kilogram of nitrogen needed for 1 ton of wheat. Sorry, there is a mistake in the text. So the ratio is 15 kilogram of nitrogen for 1 ton of wheat, when in very conventional production and high productive region, the ratio is almost 3. So much less nitrogen needed to produce 1 ton of wheat, which is absolutely great. And the last conclusion of these first trials are that testing side-by-side furrow application and seed coating gives almost the same results. So for larger area, using the furrow application is much easier than coating big quantities of seeds. So this was all for today. A few take-home message out of my presentation. Before adding new microbiomes, start with rebuilding, or start to try to rebuild the native situation. Just very short, we have been destroying this native situation by heavy tillage, but mostly the use of chemical fertilizer, fungicide and insecticide. This is already proven. So the idea is that we don't know what we have destroyed. That's basically as simple as that. But we have to reestablish, taking from native land, from native ground, taking what is still there, multiplying it and re-inoculating the soil. There are many farms available solutions, and it's not always about costs of inputs. There are also almost free solutions. Try to think green before gray. That's sometimes the problem with some highly equipped farmers, that they think that solutions are always in technology and in equipment, etc. Solutions are first in the green. Solutions are first in this microbiome, in this cover crop, and the way we plant and we manage them. I'm very sorry, but I have no silver bullet for you, even more about phosphorus. So no magic solution, but a lot of processes to maximize. Nothing is simple in farming, and organic even more. And finally, I didn't highlight that, but regarding these semi-permanent cover crop and crops in general, try not to export anything from the field. So cultivating alfalfa or clover for 1 or 2 years or 3 years, it's aimed at being left on the soil, mowed, mulch on the soil, and not exporting, because you are exporting your nutrients. So at best, if you export, just bring the equivalent in manure or even more. But the idea is to try to import more in the field, just gather everything you can outside the farm, being green residues, urban compost, whatever, and try to import only for arable farmers, export only grain, and leave the rest on the field. This first webinar I participated in is part of the QFTP project. You may know that FIBL and Ukraine are collaborating for more than 15 years now. And this new phase of this project collaboration is aimed at higher value-added trades to the organic and dairy sector in Ukraine. Mainly my colleagues Toralf and Tobias are managing and implementing these projects. I'm here as technical advisor, let's say senior advisor, and I will have the pleasure to share some time with you next week on the next webinar. Thank you very much.
Щиро дякую.
Thank you
Mykola.
very much, Mykola. We have some questions, so probably we take them right now. They say we have some issues with the animal husbandry, especially now when there is ongoing war. We don't need, which means we don't have enough manure. What's the best way to create high quality compost without manure, animal-based manure, maybe basing it only on plants? What's your recommendation?
Still the same ratio. I mean, try to mix green plants like silage or green plants 30 to 40%, straw and wood chips. This is replace the manure with cereal straw, for example, but you have to keep more or less this balance of 3/3, and at least a very few manure, a very few percent, let's say, of manure in the process to inoculate the whole compost. If you cannot provide 30% of the total volume, at least 5 to 10%, maybe around 5 is already good if it's well distributed in the compost, just to start the process of composting.
Дякую.
Thank you.
Які там Ну, там були запитання.
We had some questions, probably for Ivan Havran, or yeah, it was about certification and regulation. We are going to take those questions later. Dear participants, if you have any questions for Mykola now, please ask them now. I'm just trying to look through the chat. Alkaline nitrogen. Is it? I don't know for whom this question is. I will, Mykola, I will probably try and answer this question. That's the question. This is an interesting one. This is a method to identify nitrogen content. We degrade soil with other alkaline or acid, and we identify nitrogen structures in the content of soil. I don't know whether it's available only in alkaline hydrolyzed soils. We just need to know that farmers who have nitrate, both nitrate and alkaline hydrolyzed nitrogen fields, they are similar. I saw different farms, both organic and not organic, and I saw different results depending on what kind of technologies they used. Thank you. I have a question for Mykola. With extraction, this compost tea or liquid, when we create this biodynamic compost in big volumes, when we need to prepare extract and then to inject it into furrows or irrigate the leaves, how do you do that when we talk about Johnson's compost? How do you extract from Johnson's compost using aeration method? Can you give us some applicable, actionable tips when we work with big surface areas?
One way is to take this cubic meter container without top, half of the volume with compost, half of the filled with water. So you have already 1,000 liters of mix, more or less. You have to mix it mechanically for minutes, 10, 20 minutes at least, and then filtering it roughly. Depend how you use it. If you use it with the sprayer, then you have to filter it quite a lot. Or you can take out the filter out of all the system of the sprayer just to not get stuck with all the sprayer. Yeah, we use it. We use some tissues filter, not too fine because we don't have to filter it at the micron. But it usually work quite well with this cubic container, cubitainer, with the valve on the bottom. Yeah, but the important is agitation. Very long time. Even if you think it's already mixed, the agitation is yeah, mechanic agitation very energically. You really have to break all these small particles of compost and that everything enter in contact with water. I've been doing it for 100 hectares, but maybe you have farmers with thousands of hectares, and there it's just a question of scale. But I'm pretty sure farmers are good at inventing new processes.
Так, а я не зрозумів, время...
I didn't understand. And what is the time of aeration? You tell the 20-40 minutes, is that okay? Or we have to spend hours to aerate it so that it will be extracted properly?
No, 20, let's say 20, 30 minutes. It's yeah, it really depends of the raw material of the compost. Some raw material will give some more sticky and some harder particles. Some are, after 9 months of composting, are more soft and are more prone to completely dissolve in water. So the idea is to not find anything left, granules in the water. Everything has to be completely, let's say, explode. No more particles. So it really it's visual. Let's say it's I can't say, but it is not hours. It's not during hours. It's let's say maximum half an hour, and you have all these things are in suspension.
А там запитання в чаті, ну, в зв'язку з зміненням
There is a
клімату.
question in the chat. Due to the climate change in Europe, we can see that the warming process is going on. Maybe there are new cover crops which are more efficient than previously. Like, for example, we actually grow a lot of rye to fight the weeds, and also phacelia and the mustard, and these are the major cover crops. But maybe there is something special due to the climate change. Maybe they will be more, efficient. Maybe you have found other plants which could serve as the green manure in Europe.
I've been trying a few of them, mainly legumes. And the problem with exotic legumes is that we don't have the proper inoculum in the soil or even in commercial form. A few months ago, I've been trying sun hemp, Crotalaria, which is well known in Brazil and in all Latin America. Unfortunately, it wasn't the first time, but one of my farmer, let's say, really wanted to try, and he bought some seeds in Bulgaria, and I was looking for a specific inoculum. You can't find it. There is no commercial form of inoculum in Europe. So we planted it, and the sun hemp grows at maybe 40 centimeter high, but no nodules, no rhizobium present on the roots. So it was like any other kind of plant, let's say, not this very lushy, powerful legume that we see in Latin America. So sun hemp, it looks very nice on YouTube, but it doesn't really work in Europe. But at the opposite, maybe you use it already. What English called chickling peas, which is Lathyrus sativa. It's a kind of pea, let's say, with the seeds are quite square, like small cubes, and this is giving very good results. Resistance to drought, resistance to our semi-continental Eastern Europe climates, and a very nice production of nitrogen. And it's not host of much of the disease we have on other legume crops. So it's a quite good candidate, this Lathyrus sativa. And very easy also to produce on farm, to produce your own seeds.
Я тоді відкрию запитання. Да, вологі. У нас зараз недостача вологі, тому
The humidity. Very few people are sowing the winter crops because there are a lot of rain. Is there any species which, while the humidity is low, we can use as the cover crop, or maybe we have to use the same legumes and the same traditional cover crops, but we have to wait until it starts raining?
Don't wait until it starts raining. In summer, you always do better as seeding after harvest. And what we found here in Europe, because even in Western Europe, we start to really struggle with planting anything in the summer. We are also hit here in Central and Western Europe with this very long period without rain. But regarding cover crop, what is really true is that planting after combine, even if it's bone dry, will always work at the condition to plant deep, if not very deep. 5 centimeters is not too much. That's a very thumb rule. In the summer, you can plant any seed at 5 centimeter, even more when they are mixed, different species together. They will all, once they get the enough humidity, if it's really too dry, but they are waiting there for the rain, every seed will germinate and pop up. So 5 centimeter is the rule. And the bigger the seeds, the easier they will germinate, because they have this there's inside moisture in them, so they need a little less, let's say, moisture, and they are more prone to catch the moisture around. So the bigger the seeds, the more germination you have. So these chickling peas, for example, they are like peas, and yeah, and they can germinate with very few moisture. But yeah, just the last condition, I didn't specify, but this is all valid if you are able to plant in no-till, in wheat stubble, without any kind of tillage in the summer.
Мгм. Дякую. Ще тут практик біодинаміки.
Thank you. The practitioner biodynamics, Ivan, is asking a question whether we are working in the organic farming, and we are mostly introducing bacteria, fungi, and microorganisms. Are there any research about the fact that this sprayers actually exercise some pressure, and they might kill the fungi, or the sprayers don't affect the microorganisms, bacteria, and fungi, and when we are spraying the leaves with them, does it affect the bacteria or not?
Very good question. I don't know if there are some studies, but in some publication, it is recommended somehow to make sure that in any part of the sprayer, the pressure doesn't exceed, I think it's 1.5 bar. And this is not the final pressure you have in the nozzle. This is on the wall, in the whole machine, because in some part of the machine you have the pressure regulation and so on, and at some points the pressure can exceed this. I don't have number on that. It was also one of my concerns when I was using it, and we decided to apply this. The few trials I had, we decided to apply with the liquid nitrogen option. So these are nozzles which are not making. They are not spraying with high pressure. It's just some small droplet, let's say, specific nozzle for liquid nitrogen, and they are very low in pressure. This like 0.5 bar at the nozzle, so meaning that the whole machine is working very low. Yeah. But you're right, this is a concern. So for people who want to inoculate with sprayer, try to minimize the pressure at as much as possible.
Мгм. Дякую. Дякую. Я всім
Thank
просто...
you. And I would like to remind everyone that we have the translators till 6 o'clock. And we have one more speaker. We have one more speaker, Yulia Mironova, and she is a researcher of the protection of plants, phytopathologies, and she is a plant action researcher. And she would like to talk us about the mechanisms of nitrogen fixation and phosphate potassium mobilization. So then we won't be able to ask Mykola the questions, if are any, after the presentation. So Yulia, please, let us accelerate. Good afternoon. I will try to be able to tell you within 9 minutes, to tell you about how the fixation and potassium mobilization fixation take place, and what are the factors which affect the efficiency thereof. And it's very important. So if you are using the phosphomobilizers and the nitrogen fixers, you will get good results and not just waste your money on that. I will start from the simplest thing. So what is the composition of our soil? Because the soil is the basis of our yields, and we have to pay attention to the composition of the soil. If we divide conditionally the soil, I'm not going to talk about all the components. There are lots of minerals and organic components, but I'm going to talk about the basics. The basic composition of the soil, well, we have the organic part, which includes the humus and the mineral part. The organical part of soil, if well, it's 85% consists of humus, and 10% the residue of plants, and 5% is the flora and fauna of the soil. And there is a very interesting relationship. These 15%, these are the residues of plants and microorganisms, create a humus as such. So 85% of our organic component of our soil. So if we are working efficiently with these 15%, we can get the better yield on our soil. And also, I'm talking here on this slide about the possibility to break down the structure into gaseous, liquid, and the solid phase. This is about the mechanical conditions for growing plants, because if some of these components will disappear from our soil, or the ratio will be changed. Well, for example, liquid phase will be increased to 35 or 40, then we will have flooded, we will have less gaseous phase, and the plants will decrease the yields, and they will be macerated. But if the solid phase is more than 50%, then the soil will be too compact, and they are not going to grow properly. They will be low, and they will not create good root systems, and we have to pay attention to this as well. And it is very important in organic farming, and the sources of nitrogen, potassium, and phosphor. It is true that we can find them in the natural conditions, and it is possible to work on it. The first source of our nutrients are the residue of plants, which we need to keep at the field where we have been working, because they actually accumulate a lot of nutrients, and ideally they could be efficiently used as the destructors of stub, which give an opportunity to bring back the nutrients into the soil. These could be azotobacter bacteria. These are great nitrogen fixers, which fix the atmosphere nitrogen from the air, and depending on the conditions, they can actually fix 5 to 50 kilos of nitrogen per hectare. And the rhizobia may be accumulating bacteria of the nitrogen, so they can fix 60 to 300 kilograms per hectare to fix the nitrogen. And the phosphorus, if we are talking about Ukrainian soils, there is a lot of it. Up to 30–35% of phosphorus is in the organic form, and thanks to the microorganisms, this phosphorus could be converted into the accessible form, and the plant will get it. There is a lot of potassium in the Ukrainian soils, and again, this is the question of the correct work with this soil. And if we are looking at nitrogen, so it is very important to understand that nitrogen in the natural environment is being transformed, and there is a cycle of transformation, and it is not stopped. And we have to understand that we can understand the cycles of fixation of the nitrogen as nitrification or desertification. And this is always a cycle, and we cannot look at it as separate elements. It is also important to understand that the whole cycle of nitrogen happens due to the activities of the microorganisms, and they are different in each cycle. and a part of the cycle. And while testing the ground, we can understand at which cycle the problems emerge, and we can affect this cycle to make this farm more efficient, working with the nitrogen. The first microorganisms which participate in this cycle of nitrogen, these are free-living nitrogen fixers, the azotrophs, and they are the first to capture the nitrogen from air, and they transfer it into the soil and then actually transform it into the ammonia. And these microorganisms start the cycle, launch this cycle, and then others start working. You can see the list of the main microorganisms which participate in this cycle. And actually, these azotobacter species, they are used most often, and they are most available in the Ukrainian soils. And you can see the list of bacteria. If we are talking about the azotobacter, so we can see that there is a lot of it in the black soil, into the podzols, and the ideal conditions are the neutral acidity. And if pH is lower than 5.5, so then the number of azotobacter decreases by 16 to 36%, and the most bad soils are the soils where the acidity is lower than 5, and also it is influenced by various factors which are being described here on this slide. Like, for example, if we are introducing mineral fertilizers, this will suppress the activity of these bacteria, and they would fix less nitrogen in the soil because they don't need it. And also it is necessary to understand that the microelements can have an impact, molybdenum and boron, and if they can decrease the cells of azotobacter. Also, development of azotobacter and fixation of the nitrogen thereof depends on the number of the amount of phosphorus. If it's not sufficient, the nitrogen fixation is going to be lower, and also calcium can have an impact. It is necessary to nutrition of the azotobacter, and if it is insufficient, then this brings about vacuolization of the cells, and they die. If we are talking about the temperature conditions, it develops quite well in our climate, and the optimum temperature is 25-28 degrees Celsius, and the minimum temperature when it is officially starts working is 10 degrees Celsius, and maximum is 35. If this temperature is higher or lower, then azotobacter is going into the status of cysta, and they actually survive until these adverse conditions are improved and the conditions become good for them. If we are talking about the acidity, well, they like the acidity of 4, and the maximum acidity in the soil should be 8. I'm not going to talk a lot of it. We talked a lot about the rhizobia a lot. In this case, we have to understand in this particular case that they live in symbiosis with the plant, and the most official fixation affect not only development of the bacteria, but development of the plant as well. On this slide, you can see the process of creation of the nodules. And you can see that they generate flavonoids, and when bacteria feels that is growing in the direction of this tissue of the plant, and it actually produces certain substance which bring about the creation of the nodule starts, and we can see those on the plant. And if the process of nitrogen fixation was successful and this nodule is working efficiently, we usually, when you break it, you will see inside it the red tissue, and this hemoglobin, which participate in the nitrogen fixation. So if this nodule is red, so it means that the nitrogen fixation is efficient. But if it is gray or green, then nitrogen fixation is not being carried out efficiently. To develop the rhizobia, the humidity is very important. We need at least 67-70% from the humidity capacity of the soil to start the process of formation of the nodules. The minimum humidity under which it is possible to create the nodules is 16% of the full humidity capacity. And if there are more than 30 kilograms of fertilizers is being introduced, then the nodules might fail to be formed. Also, the amount of phosphorus is very important from the point of view of the biology of the plant. If the phosphorus is not sufficient, usually the bacteria do not get into the root of the plant. Also, magnesium and molybdenum deficiency might affect adversely the formation of the nodules. And another factor is the deficit of boron, because then the vascular formations are being formed, and the bacteroid tissue is not being developed properly, and it doesn't work effectively and efficiently. And the temperature, the minimum temperature for nodules to be created is 10 degrees Celsius, maximum 30, and optimal temperature is 15 degrees Celsius. And acidity, the bacteria usually require neutral acidity. Minimum acidity is 5.2 and maximum 7.5. And this is everything I wanted to tell you about the nitrogen fixing microorganisms. But if we are talking about phosphorus and potassium mobilization, well, there are lots of various bacteria doing that. And the previous speakers talked a lot about the phosphorus and potassium. Where does it come from? So I'm not going to elaborate on that. And I would like to go over to the microorganisms which participate in mobilization of the phosphorus and potassium, because this was not discussed amply by the previous speakers. So how does it happen? A significant number of soil microorganism species, both bacteria and micromycetes, are capable of synthesizing a wide range of organic acids, including, and these acids actually split the salts of phosphorus, and they create in the future the accessible minerals which are diluted in water. They are not working as the nitrogen fixators, who are, with the help of their bodies, create these processes. But in this case, the process takes place at the expense of in the process of life of this of these bacteria. And thanks to their proactive function, the nutrients are being split. If we are talking about the phosphorus, if we are talking about the potassium, the microorganisms also can split the silicates, which are not dilutable, which include potassium, and they also create the organic acids, which I mentioned before. And in the mineral nutrition, the enzymes can participate. Phytases and hydrogenases, silicase, the wide spectrum of various substances which can split potassium and phosphorus. So what bacteria can do that? Usually in the industrial conditions, the preparations are being developed on the basis of Bacillus megatherium or Bacillus subtilis or Bacillus meganosus. Sometimes the Bacillus antimylophortius are being used and Centimonius floricis are being used because they have an ability to mobilize phosphorus. So there is a wide spectrum of bacteria which are capable of grow quite efficiently and develop under the various conditions in the laboratories and plants, and we can use them to be introduced into the soil, and they will work with our soils. If we are talking about the factors which are influencing them, these phosphomobilizing bacteria are more resilient than nitrogen fixing, and it's easier to work with them, and they survive under more difficult conditions in the environment. I give an example, the Panibacillus polymyx. It is aerobic bacteria. Sometimes it's a facultative anaerobic organism, and apart from being a mobilizer of phosphorus and potassium, it can affix nitrogen, and it can live in the rhizospheric of the plants, in the root system, and it synthesizes various antibiotics substances, and they can work under the phytopathogens. So this bacteria can be used to coat the seeds, and we can protect the root system, and also to get additional fixation of the atmospheric nitrogen if it is not available in the environment to a great degree. And the mobilization of phosphorus and potassium. And it can also synthesize the hormones and to stimulate our plant, and we are increasing the yields. If we are taking into account the temperature conditions, the minimum temperature is 5 degrees of Celsius, maximum 45, and optimal temperature for its development is 29 degrees. So the conditions for these microorganisms are quite fit into quite a wide spectrum. If we are talking about the acidity, so the optimal is 6.8, 7.2, minimum 5.5, and the maximum is 8. So again, this is quite a wide spectrum of the conditions. The next microorganism is also very interesting. It's a bacteria, Bacillus megatheriomyces. It's an proactive phosphomobilizer, and it is positioned as a good phosphor mobilization bacteria, and it transforms the phosphorus into the form which is available for the plants, and it also produces the substance which can create phosphorus, and it produces biologically proactive substances as the vitamins B12, for example, and the various vitamins which support our plant, and it has a very wide spectrum of influence. And it is very difficult to find microorganism which will have only one mechanism of action. They are usually comprehensively affect the situation in the soil. The minimum temperature is 3 degrees, maximum is 45, and optimal is 30. And we can find a lot of these microorganisms, and they are developing in a wide spectrum of conditions. The acidity is 6, the optimal one for the majority of the bacteria. Also to mobilize phosphorus and calcium, Bacillus meganosus is being used. They can transform the insoluble phosphates into the available form for the plants and fix the atmospheric nitrogen. And in this case, this bacteria is very resilient to the adverse conditions of the environment, and it can live even in the liquid nitrogen with the temperature of minus 196 degrees of Celsius and 160 degrees plus of Celsius, and it is very resilient, and it is very good for using in the biopreparations. The temperature, optimal temperature for this microorganism is 29 degrees Celsius, and the minimum is 5, and the maximum is 45. When I'm talking about the acidity and temperature, I mean those which are needed to develop these microorganisms, the minimum and maximum. But in reality, if these minimum temperatures and acidity are not provided, these microorganisms, which we are talking about the bacteria of Bacillus, and they actually become these spores, and they are being kept until the favorable conditions are going to be created. So now, well, they are getting into the status of the spores, and they will start working starting from spring. This is everything I wanted to tell you. Thank you for your attention. If you have questions, you can call me, you can write me to the my email, and or you can use this QR code to get into my site, and you will have the telephone numbers of our regional representatives in every oblast of Ukraine, and also our foreign representatives who are working in various countries of the world and are implementing biotechnologies and various types of soils given the various temperatures and acidity. Thank you. You just fit your presentation into the desired time. Well, our English-speaking channel is going to be disconnected now, and still, I would like to use 5 minutes to ask 2 questions. So, Anastasia, shall we complete an English translation? I wanted to talk to the 2 producers of the preparations, biopreparations, and by the way, the question is about them. Well, Ivan asked this question, and also I wanted to repeat it. Mykola Petrovich is here with us. He is a producer of the microbiological preparations, and Yulia is a representative of the center, which they are also developing metarhizium, trichoderma, and do you have any, and fungi, do you have any requirements to the pressure of the sprinkles? Because if we are introducing the main preparations, we usually are using the dripping system and not to destroy the microorganisms. But you 2 producers of fungi, if these are spores, we can understand it more or less. But if it is a living fungi, do you have any research in terms of pressure and under which the fungi are not destroyed? We were not studying the question of the pressure which affects the microorganism, but in the majority of cases, our preparations are in spore form, and the pressure doesn't affect us too much. But if we talk about the practical application of these preparations by various means, because now we are also introducing our bio preparations using the drones. So this is a discussion question. Like trichoderma, if we are talking about it, we are not introducing metarhizium and bavarium, for example. So maybe, yeah, these are for the soil. So yeah, sorry, Ludmila, Yulia, just a moment. Anastasia couldn't join us. So we can let the interpreters go. So thank you, Nicholas. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, goodbye.
Thank you. See you next week.
Nicholas, thank you very much. So next Thursday, we hope that we are going to discuss a different topic. We are going to talk about the tillage of the soil. So the English channel is being disconnected now, and we are going to continue to discuss issues in Ukrainian. So goodbye, Nikolai.
Goodbye.
Я що-то бачу, що ви, по-моєму, це не вивчали.
Ні,
Отак
от саме тиск форсунок ні. Єдине, що ось я можу сказати по внесенню дронами, ну там зазвичай теж досить такий високий тиск, і потрібно бути дуже обережними в цьому випадку, тому що може бути забивання форсунок. На це потрібно дуже звертати увагу на фільтри. Ну, бо можуть бути такі випадки. Ми стараємося таке виключати, якщо є така можливість звертати увагу на кількість мікрон в сіточці оприскувача для того, щоб вже на виробництві пропускати під ту кількість мікрон, яку необхідно, ці мікроорганізми. Тобто під дрони ми зазвичай стараємося зробити той препарат, де було більше все-таки спор і менше міцелію гриба. Якщо говорити за грибні препарати, такі як там препарати на основі триходерми або княтіріума мінітенса. На ефективність це ніяк не впливає. Якщо говорити про триходерму і про склероцит, ну, тобто ті препарати, які грибні по вегетації вносяться дронами, то ефективність не знижується. Я перевіряла на полях, коли проводила фітосанітарні обстеження, все досить добре таки працює. Тобто, умовно можу сказати, що тиск на них ніяк не вплинув. Але щоб було дослідження, де були різні умови внесення з різним тиском, і ми відстежували ефективність, то такого ми не проводили. Це досить таки
з
цікаве
самого
запитання.
початку було понятно, що... Так, Микола Петрович, а ви, як виробник біопрепаратів, у вас є якісь дослідження, які як тиск впливає на гриби, на міцелій, на потім ефективність? Ви нас там чуєте, чи Микола Петрович є, але його немає, наверное. Хорошо, мы потім поднимем. У нас еще будет тема якраз по біологічні методи боротьби з хворобами, біологічні методи боротьби зі шкідниками. Я думаю, що ми там відкроємо. Я дякую усім. Пропоную завершати, тому що ми так можемо говорити ще часами. Дякую усім. Наступний у нас 12 жовтня обробіток ґрунту та підбір техніки, методи боротьби з бур'янами, знаряддя та механізми. Бур'яни все ж таки це дуже важливо в органічному землеробстві, це дуже важлива така неприємна річ, як бур'яни, і з ними треба боротися. І ми це якраз обговоримо. Тому дякую всім, будемо завершати. До наступного четверга. Оставайтесь з нами. До побачення всім.
Щасливо.